There will be an emergency session of the House of Commons tomorrow as MPs face a crucial Brexit deadline. If they agree to Theresa May's deal by tomorrow night, Britain's exit date will be May the 22nd. If not, the country faces a no-deal exit in 2 weeks. Well, this afternoon, the government said that in an attempt to get the longer deadline, the Commons would only be asked to approve part of the withdrawal deal, with the more politically contentious plans for the future relationship left to one side. Furious opposition MPs said that they're being asked to agree to a blind Brexit. Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, is with me now. Gary.
Well, people are struggling with why these two documents have been split apart. Part of it, it seems, is to get around the ruling that the Speaker was making, that the government could only put this whole thing again if it did it in a different way. Well, this is a different way. Some people in government are signalling, well, actually what this does is it leaves open the other document, which is the Declaration about the Future Relationship. It leaves that open for Parliament to muck about with it, to put its own new shape on it. I don't think that's exactly an olive branch that they're showing to Parliament. It might just be a bit of convenience, because when I asked someone else, a DUP source who's been in and out of Number 10 and the centre of power and corridors of Whitehall a lot in recent times, they said, gesturing towards Number 10, don't underestimate how much it's just falling apart in there. There is also an iconic date. They had to hit the 29th of March with something, they felt, because it has become seared into people's minds, particularly Brexit supporters, as a date of the utmost importance. And Theresa May, in that EU summit last week, apparently promised the leaders in the room that she would have the vote this week. So even though the votes don't quite seem to be there, that seems to be why it is happening tomorrow, to the surprise of some MPs who are flying back from different parts of the United Kingdom to be here, having thought the week was pretty much over. The parallel process we have going on, of course, is that sort of parallel want-to-be government. The MPs themselves, who last night did their indicative votes, they didn't exactly cover themselves in glory. Nothing actually won in the 8 options that was there. But that, as we said last night, that was probably never going to happen. What those MPs are doing now and busily over the weekend is seeing what they can put together, maybe fusing certain options to see if they can put together the people who voted for that with the people who voted for that without frightening either one. Maybe you go for a customs union with a binding referendum on the side, but that could frighten quite a lot of people in either camp. But they're still determined to come up with something next week. They're not giving up at all on that process. But the big question, of course, when you've got a big vote like this tomorrow is, will the government win? And in this world of uncertainty that we're in at the moment, I think of that we can be sure. This is going down to defeat. Tomorrow afternoon, 8.5 hours before the moment Britain was meant to be leaving the EU, MPs will vote again on the government's Brexit deal. Yesterday, hoping to help turn things round after 2 thumping Commons defeats, Theresa May announced the clock was ticking down on her own premiership.
I think that we saw yesterday that some people did say that they were willing to support the deal, who voted against it before. But I think now it's a challenge for MPs of every political party in the House of Commons.
The Prime Minister's resignation promised to backbenchers at the 1922 committee brought some converts from the ERG pro-Brexit group. But for others, the squeeze tactic isn't working.
It backfired. The 1922 committee was a total stitch-up, but then all Tory MPs know it always is. And when the ERG met after that, Steve Baker was so angry he gave this very emotional speech, almost with tears in his eyes, about what how angry he was by what had just happened.
Good reception for that?
He was given a standing ovation.
How many people, how many are left in what's being called the Spartans?
More than enough.
24?
More than enough.
The government said passing the withdrawal agreement tomorrow was the European leaders' condition laid down for a 2-month extension of the Brexit that was meant to happen tomorrow.
We could not let the time limit expire at 11 o'clock tomorrow without allowing this House the opportunity of availing itself of that right.
MPs today were still absorbing the implications of their votes last night on 8 different Brexit options.
So the noes have it, the noes have it, the noes have it. So the noes have it, the noes have it, the noes have it. So the noes have it, the noes have it.
which ended in all 8 being defeated. Jean-Claude Juncker's spokesman in Brussels was amongst those glued to the screen.
We counted 8 no's last night. Now we need a yes on the way forward.
Supporters of a softer Brexit are trying to work out how to get a decent majority in the Commons for one approach in another round of voting on Monday. And they're warning Brexit rebels they won't like where this is going.
Those that are dancing on the heads of pins for their purest ideological version of Brexit may really rue the day that if they force either her deal now to be dropped or a vote and it to be lost again. I think
because you guys are coming back.
Well, I think they need to recognise that there is going to be a softer Brexit if they don't get this, and tough on them.
Designed to allow the House to reconsider these matters on Monday.
Fellow Tories heckled former Minister Oliver Letwin last night as he explained how the next round of indicative votes might work.
If on Monday the House is able to reach a majority view, I think that would be in the interests of our constituents and of the country.
But some of his allies believe full membership of the EU customs union could be passed by MPs next week.
We live in a democracy. If Parliament says we passed a law saying do this, then governments have to obey the law like the rest of us.
But it's really hard to see the clear path to much at all at the moment, but the clear path to a government implementing a customs union and not being brought down in a vote of no confidence perhaps by some hardline Brexiteers.
Well, if Parliament has willed it, then it's unclear why the government wouldn't do it. I mean, a government would want to do it. People are saying that, we'd bring them down in the vote of confidence. Actually, I don't think they would, and they certainly shouldn't. If this is the will of Parliament, then any government has to obey it.
But before that, Theresa May will honour a pledge she made to EU leaders at the summit last week to put the vote here this week. The margin of defeat should shrink, but no one is expecting victory.
Well, we're joined now by Rory Stewart MP, the Minister of State for Prisons. Rory Stewart, do you think the government's going to win this tomorrow? Do ministers think they're going to win it tomorrow?
It all depends on Labour. So what's essentially happened is we've broken the problem down. Instead of talking about the future and the withdrawal agreement at the same time, we've now split them up. And given that the Labour front bench has said repeatedly that their problem is with the political declaration and not with the withdrawal agreement.
But now they're saying they're being asked to vote on a blind Brexit.
Right. So it isn't a blind Brexit because they will have every opportunity in law to vote for the political declaration, for a withdrawal agreement act, through the meaningful vote. This is just sorting out citizens' rights. This is sorting out the way the Irish border would work, and this is setting the transition period, all of which Keir Starmer and Jeremy Corbyn say they have no problem with.
Yeah, but they are the most contentious issues. The whole House is still confused about all of them.
Yes, but not the Labour front bench.
Tomorrow, just to leave with nothing else on the statute book, it does look like a blind Brexit.
So in that sense it is, John, but the Labour front bench has said again and again, and it depends how you do this kind of negotiation. If you're trying to negotiate a divorce or a civil war, you find something that you agree on, and you get that done, and then you move on to the things that you disagree on.
And what do you say to the EU, who were expecting a package of both? They would then know what your intentions were, but they don't now.
So all you have to say to the EU is that they can see as clearly as any of us does what's going on here. I don't think the EU's naive. Many of them run coalition governments. They know more about British politics than almost anyone. All we're explaining is that we're trying to take it one bite at a time.
Let's be clear, does the government absolutely rule out a no-deal Brexit? Because that could flow from this.
Well, so for me, I'm very opposed to a no-deal Brexit. But
you'd resign over it?
I have said again and again that I'm resigning over prisons, not about no-deal Brexit. But I'm very against the no-deal Brexit, as are a lot of my colleagues. I think it would be dangerous, unnecessary, damaging. This withdrawal agreement at least gets the transition period in place. It would give some sort of reassurance to businesses, and let us see what happens over the next few months. Now, of course, if you don't want to leave the European Union at all, you're not going to want the withdrawal agreement. But if you want to leave with a deal, this is your best chance of getting that.
Tomorrow was supposed to be Brexit Day. Instead, you're in a complete shambles. This is no condition, a constitutional crisis, a complete breakdown of trust between MPs and the country.
Sure.
Why doesn't the government say, look, I'm sorry, we have tried, but the last 2 years have taught us that we are as divided as the rest of the country. So shall we just stay, think it all over, work it out, and maybe in 5-10 years' time, if it becomes necessary, then perhaps we could try going again.
So, unfortunately, John, the country's as divided about your proposal as they are about anything else. So it wouldn't solve anything. We know the country is split nearly 50-50 down the middle on this issue. Simply remaining or simply going for a hard Brexit isn't going to solve this. I genuinely believe the only way to solve this is to try to find a pragmatic compromise. If we have a 52-48 vote, we need a 52-48 result. And the only way of doing that is to try to stay close to the European economically, but leave the political institutions. I'm afraid that just pretending the thing didn't happen isn't going to solve the deep divisions in British society.
So far, we've spoken on the basis that you win tomorrow. But if you lose, this will be an even bigger crisis.
But, John, there's no doubt it's an enormous crisis. There's no doubt there are probably...
Well, what do you do? What happens if you lose tomorrow? What is the threat you're offering the opposition?
I would continue to argue again and again for a very moderate, practical, compromise Brexit. It's the only way of getting through this, because otherwise you face a binary choice.
Forgive me, the government wouldn't have done this if they haven't worked out what will happen if they lose.
So, if we lose, we have to get into other conversations. But I don't think we need to lose on this, because this isn't where we disagree with Labour. This is where we disagree. I mean, for people, and there'll be many people watching this, who are real Remainers and who wish this whole thing never happened, in which case they're not interested in any kind of Brexit deal. They're not going to want this thing to go through tomorrow. But the Labour front bench and the Conservative front bench have the position that we accept the referendum and we want a deal. We want a deal, we all agree on the agreement, get that done, and then we can talk about the details later.
Yes or no, Mrs May is bound to leave pretty soon now. Are you a candidate?
Am I a candidate? I don't think I have much more chance of being a Tory candidate than you, John, at the moment.
Sounds as if more or less everybody in the Tory party has a chance.
Yes, we might as well all run at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Laura Stewart.